And we're here. Welcome, everyone. Azure-cosmos DB live TV. Sorry we're a little late coming in today. I forgot to push the go live button. So here we are, Rodrigo and I talking to ourselves, thinking we're talking to an audience. Anyway, here we are, episode 6. And today I've got with me Rodrigo Souza. Rodrigo, do you want to say hi?
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So anyway, today Rodrigo is going to talk to us about the Azure Cosmos DB Python SDK, and also a very natural home for using our Python SDK, which is our Cosmos DB notebooks. So since we're kind of 2 minutes into this thing, why don't we go right to you, Rodrigo, and take us on a little tour of our Python SDK.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah.
So let's go. In this small presentation, we'll see some interesting statistics about Python in general and also about the Cosmos DB Python SDK. We'll see some typical use cases, some new use cases we're seeing as well. I'm going to show you the last updates we had in this SDK and some frequent asked questions. And it's important because they were driven by common, typical support cases we have for the SDK. I'm going to show you as well the roadmap and some important links we have. And right after, I'm going to show you the GitHub repo, where we have very important and key information on how to use this SDK. And I'm going to do some demos as well. I'm going to show you tricks on how to use this SDK.
Awesome. That sounds good.
Yes, let's go. So Python statistics. Today we have more than 140,000 jobs, Python jobs, just in the US. So it's a simple search. If you search LinkedIn, you'll see that Python is trending. Python is the second most popular language on GitHub. That's a GitHub statistic. And also, I was checking Google Trends, and last year Python was the first language on all search in Google.
It's quite popular these days, isn't it?
It is, and we're seeing people from many areas, like doctors, engineers. Everybody's working with Python today, right? I have this cousin. She's studying finances in US UCLA University, and she studied Python, so it's pretty popular.
It seems like it used to be a lot of business types used to learn like Visual Basic back in the old days, right? Like back in the 90s or whatever, or maybe Fox Pro. People that were trying to write like productivity applications or something to help them do their jobs. Seems like a lot of maybe those people are now turning to Python. Maybe to do some of those same types of things. Even other developers that I know that are either into JavaScript or PHP or even .NET are also learning Python as well, it seems. So definitely no
scientists,
no lack of interest. So, and then of course we hired the inventor of Python as well, I think. So
yes. That's a good point that I should have included here in our presentation. And our SDK today, with our SDK today, we have something like 1 billion requests per day in Cosmos DB.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And it's getting popular. So some interesting statistics about Python in general. Typical use cases, IoT. And here I'm not talking about only the analysis of the IoT data, but the IoT devices, because Python is a multi-platform language, and it's pretty easy to install Python in small, restricted devices with not that much of hardware. It's a common use case we have. Also, devices management. Many manufacturers, like PC manufacturers, they use Python to manage your device remotely. And when they are Cosmos DB users, probably they are using our SDK to upload the data to Cosmos DB. And we can see also serverless applications like Azure Functions, right? Many Azure Functions applications, now Azure Functions, since 2 years ago, I think, Azure Functions for Linux went GA, and it was a boost on the SDK usage as well. Some new trends we're seeing. Data exploration, and because of the notebooks interface, it's pretty easy to do some analysis, and we are seeing not only specialists using Python for data exploration. Sometimes we are seeing managers and not that technical profiles, personas. Someone created a notebook for them, and they are using a notebook to analyze data, right? In our case, to analyze Cosmos DB data. Also, data engineering and data science. It's getting common to see these two personas using our SDK to analyze Cosmos DB data, right?
Those are the traditional Python users, though, right? Your data science guy, your data engineer, the data science guy primarily, right? So,
yes.
I mean, it seems like that's what's driven kind of this huge community. I mean, Python has got a great community of libraries, and a lot of them seem to be science driven, if you will. So,
and we have in our Cosmos DB notebooks some examples exactly using this kind of workloads, right? We created that IoT anomaly detection. We also have a whole bunch of sample notebooks using pandas and things like that, right? It's pretty common.
Yeah.
So last updates we made to the SDK, we added support for partition keys when we are creating your change feed. It's important to improve the performance. We added the capability to create analytical store enabled containers. So if you want to use Synapse Link, you need to enable an analytical store on your container. And you can create using a container like that using SDK, our SDK. Also, we added some query capabilities like distinct and offset if you want to navigate through the results, and the limit support if you don't want to all rows back in your query. And also, we worked very hard on our documentation in both places, azure.com/cosmosdb/SDK, but also in our GitHub page. You see, I'm going to navigate through the GitHub with you guys, and you see that we've been adding a lot of information and updating the usability of the notebook. This is my dog, don't worry.
And another guest on the show today.
Yeah. He's learning Python as well.
We're a family friendly, pet friendly show here, Rodrigo. So it's quite all right. So if you're walking over your desk, or I don't know, it's fine.
So right now we are in version 4.2.1. And a typical mistake we see in support cases is people trying to use the SDK with other Cosmos DB APIs, but it only works with SQL API. So make it very clear. If you want to use Python with our MongoDB API as an example, you need to use PyMongo. So for any other API, and if you're using Python, you should look for the typical open source library for that API. A very common mistake we see, we also have an SDK, a Python SDK for our table API.
We do?
But that's another SDK. That's not the Python Cosmos DB SDK, right?
I didn't even know we had a Python SDK for table API. So,
We do have, and it's common to see people trying to use one SDK with the wrong API and vice versa. So be careful. If you find an official Microsoft SDK GitHub repo for Cosmos DB, pay attention. Maybe it's the wrong API.
okay. All right.
So yes, it's built in our Cosmos DB notebook, so you don't need to install, upgrade, or things like that. And I will show you it's an enhanced implementation, so it's easier to use our SDK in our notebooks. I'm going to show you, I'm going to present how it works. Also, it doesn't support the same features of other SDKs, and used to have a lot of support cases when customers, developers were looking for a specific capability that is available in another SDK, but not in Python SDK. So we decided to list in our GitHub all limitations we have. And you see it's important. It's helping you guys to don't waste your time looking for something that is not available yet. By the way, we are using the same list to share our roadmap with the public. So
that's great. So people should just file issues if they're not seeing what they need to see, or just check it first, right? Because likely someone maybe filed an issue on a feature they want to see, or vote it up, I guess, on there as well.
And that's a very good comment, because the next bullet point here is that we enjoy collaboration. So please open issues, pull requests if you want. Let's work together to make our SDK better.
Yeah.
Yes. So another very common source of support cases is the location of the SDK. V1, 2, and 3 are located in one old GitHub repo. And V4, we had to move it to official Azure SDK repo for SDKs.
Yep.
So it's in a different place. So sometimes we're seeing people looking for V4 in the old repo.
So the one SDK team, if people aren't familiar, are consolidating and moving both control plane or RP management SDKs, as well as data plane, if there is a data plane for the service in there. So if you go to the main Azure SDK repos, you can navigate into the service, and then you should see a management SDK and then a V4 SDK. And they're still in preview. I think all of that stuff is supposed to go GA later this year. They're doing some enhancements to some of these SDKs. I know they're getting like the response objects on different things, make those look the same, feel the same. I think they're adding just like a distributed tracing in there. I think they're changing how some of the authentication works in there. Just some other things to try to make using these SDKs a little more like consistent, if you will, right? So like one team did it. So
yeah, and now we have a central administration to help us with issues and so on. It's interesting.
Yep.
What I did in our old repo, I added a message, a warning. This is old. Don't go here. Here's the link for the actual location of the SDK.
Now, have we deprecated any of these older versions yet, or
we are trying to deprecate all of them, but it's hard, of course, and we won't let our customers down.
We haven't announced deprecation for any of these, though.
No.
Okay.
And if you want to migrate, if you're using an old one, and you want to migrate, be careful, because we have breaking changes.
Yeah.
Right? Why? Because we were always improving the quality of the SDK, and we had to make some breaking changes. Not that radical, but the syntax will be a little bit different.
I mean, I think the older versions were not as Python-esque, if you will, or Pythonic, if you will,
yes.
Right? So kind of maybe rubbed regular Python users the wrong way in the way we wrote the SDK. So
actual version is very Pythonic, but the old ones, they are not.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So these are some FAQs I like to share with you.
Yes.
Roadmap. So this year we will deliver group wise. So this is a limitation, of course, listed there in our GitHub repo. And also async.io. This is a common request for data engineers. They want to do a data integration job that will move data from Cosmos DB to somewhere else or vice versa. So this feature is important for, especially for data integration scenarios. And next year we will add bulk transactional processing, batch processing, direct mode, and this is available in .NET and Java SDK. It allows you to communicate, to write and read with CosmosDB backend, not going through our gateway. So it will save in very low latency scenarios. It's important, and not for typical use cases in Python, but we'll do it as well. We're gonna add
Are we doing that direct mode all native in Python, or are we building a sidecar for that thing to handle all of the?
We'll try to do it native.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then with the bulk and transactional, you mean that's both bulk mode as well as transactional batch, right? So two different things.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
And awesome. Continuation token for cross-partition queries. So today we only support in the same partition.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So key links. The first one is our GitHub repo. And we also have this auto-generated documentation and the azure.com documentation and the package location. So I have all these links open here in my browser. So I'm gonna leave PowerPoint and let me show you here. Let me start from the end. So this is the PyPy download page where the GitHub, where the SDK is located, right? So you can download from here, and if you do a pip install, it will use it from here. We have this page, this landing page on Azure, and from here you have a link to the same page I showed before, and to this API reference documentation that is this page here. So it's auto-generated, and if you're a developer, you probably want to check how exactly every single method works, right? And instructions to install it, get started. We have a sample here in our own documentation. The release history, supported platforms. We just changed, and now we only support Python 3.6 or beta. Right?
Oh, better update that page.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we just updated. Now we need 3.6.
Oh, I see. You support both 2.7 and 3.6. I see. I thought you meant that you only supported 3.6.
Yeah, but you can use 3.5 as an example.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. So let's go to the GitHub. And as you mentioned before, while we were talking about versions, right, and GitHub locations, if you navigate to Azure SDK for Python, SDK Cosmos, you see 3 SDKs here. And we used to have a lot of confusion because of that. Which one should I use? So I added a README file here explaining what is each one of them. The Azure Cosmos, Azure Management Cosmos, and Azure Management Document DB. So Document DB is the old one, legacy. Management, this is used by, if I'm not mistaken, by Azure CLI to create accounts and things like that. So more.
That's right. So this thing gets auto-generated. I just give people like a 30 seconds. So the way our management SDKs are generated is our resource provider has a Swagger spec that's published. So if you go into the Azure SDK and you go to the REST folder there, you'll see all the resource providers, all the services. Each of them publishes Swagger spec, which of course defines the interface for all the APIs within there. Then a tool called AutoRest is used, and AutoRest is run, and then there's another markdown file that describes what you're generating it for. So you generate a .NET library, a Java library, Python, JavaScript, all the ones that we support. And so it's auto-generating this Azure Management Library, which basically is just a convenience wrapper around our REST API for our resource provider in there. So, yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
I'm going to do a future show on that, actually. I've got a whole ton of samples that I've been writing for a couple of years. I've never published them on our docs. I don't know why. I mean, I probably should publish them on our docs, but I have this huge, massive project that basically like exercises nearly every single API or function across our resource provider. So anyway, keep going.
Yeah. But if you're a developer, you need to use our azure-cosmos SDK, right?
That's the one.
That's the one. So that's what we are talking about. So here we've been working on this README file to make it as useful as possible. So we start with some generic information here, or high-level capabilities like create a database, create and modify a container, read data, write data, delete data, and query data. Some prereqs, how to create a Cosmos DB account, how to install the package. If you want, you can create a virtual environment. But here is where we start the real thing, right? So to use the SDK, you need to create an instance of the Cosmos client. And for that, you need the URI and the key of your account. So usually, you create environment variables with your resource group, account name, and you're gonna populate the URI and the key, maybe with Azure CLI, as in this example here. With these two variables populated, right, the URI and the key, that's how you create an instance of the Cosmos client. So the Cosmos client method will wait for the URL and the key. With the Cosmos client created, now you can create a database proxy. So you're gonna use these two together to populate information about the database you wanna work with. And with the database, you can create a container. So I have a whole bunch of examples below, don't worry. But this is kind of the hierarchy we have on how to use the SDK. You need to understand these key concepts here. And of course, when you have a container, you are able to manipulate the items, the data. So this is the limitations section. And the features below are not supported, right? So the idea is to save you time searching for capabilities of the SDK. If you find a limitation that is not here, let us know. We will add it. So as I mentioned when we were in the presentation, group by and async IO are in roadmap for this year. What else is not supported? Queries with count from a distinct subquery. We just learned about it. We were not aware of this limitation. It doesn't work. Bulk transactional batch processing, and we have a workaround for it. I will talk about it later.
Those, hey, by the way, those control plane limitations, we should sync on those. I'm betting that most of those are now supported.
Yes. Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah, so let's update them. Yeah.
Let's update them. Yeah, we'll have to get together. So if folks don't know, I'm the PM for our resource provider. So so it's my job to make sure that we have support for these types of things. Yeah, we'll connect offline and have a Teams call and do what Microsoft people do.
Yes. Some limitations here for change feed, especially for the pull mode. And this is important. Order by with mixed types. So this information also came from a support case, because if I'm not mistaken, the customer had the product code, and the code sometimes was a string, sometimes was a number. So you can order by when you have more than one type for that property, right? About these control plane limitations, of course, we should work together to update the list. This is what we know for now. And we just added this auto scale limitations because it's a new Cosmos DB feature and it's not working for now. We'll do it in the future to update analytical store. And as another example, minimum RUs. But the good thing about these control plane limitations, you can work around them with the portal, CLI, PowerShell, and so on, right?
Yep.
So it's pretty easy to create a Python script to run, CLI command to do whatever you need in this control plane session. About bulk processing, if you want to use Python, our Python SDK, to perform bulk inserts or updates as well, so I need to add updates here, to Cosmos DB, you can use storage procedures to write data, to write items that are in the same partition key. Why the same partition key? Because storage procedures, they have this limitation to run within the scope of one partition key, right? But that's a good alternative for bulk processing. This point here is very important. That's an interesting trick I learned. And I spent some time trying to understand what was wrong, and I found it. So Python language, and I'm going to do a demo about it.
Yeah, cool.
Python language uses true or false with the first letter in uppercase and everything else lowercase. But Cosmos DB and JSON documents, they use true and false, all letters lowercase. So that's an interesting challenge, right? How to manage this, how to deal with that. And I was creating a notebook and it was not working, errors, and I found. So what happens is, when you're creating JSON documents with Python, you should use true and false as the language understand, right? And the SDK will convert for you to true and false in the way that Cosmos DB and JSON files work, right? Meaning that behind the scenes in your collection, in your container, you'll be writing true and false in this way here, in this, lowercase, all letters lowercase. But if you retrieve these documents with the Cosmos DB portal Data Explorer, you see exactly what we wrote, true and false with a lowercase. But if you use the Python SDK to read this data again, the SDK again will convert to the Python language format.
Huh. Well, so that makes sense because Data Explorer, I think, is written using our JavaScript SDK, so it doesn't know what to do with it. So that's good. So the Python SDK is going to preserve that for you. So if you see it in Data Explorer, don't freak out. It's the way it needs to be, and you're protected as long as you're using our Python SDK to access the data.
Yes, exactly.
What if I go into can I go into the portal and change it to capital T and then save it, or will?
Well, it will not be. It will be a string, a regular string for JSON.
Oh, And then what? Will that blow up Python SDK? It just thinks it's gonna think it's a string then?
Python SDK will read as a regular string, not a Boolean.
Okay.
Strange, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do a demo on that. Don't worry.
Sure. Okay. I'm always trying to break stuff, by the way. I don't know if you know this about me.
That's how we work, right?
If you tell me something like this is how it works, the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try and break it.
We can do it live here in a couple
do it live.
Also, for queries, right? You need to use the query item method. And the good thing is you can get sub items using the from clause. So let's say you have the families collection container, but you just want the children information. So you can, instead of doing select star or select children from families, you can narrow down and reduce your RUs using something like this. You can specify the sub item you want to get back in your query. But this is an interesting trick. But to use this method, you always need to specify the partition key to the get items method. It doesn't work if the partition key is in your where clause. You also need to add it into to the query item method.
So that's different, because in the .NET SDK, we can infer the partition key being passed in if it's in the where clause. You don't have to explicitly put it in the request options.
This SDK doesn't infer yet. That's a very good capability.
Yeah, okay.
Right? But so, and when you are not showing explicitly using a partition key, it will be, for the SDK, it will be a cross-partition query. So meaning that you can, if you're not specifying the partition key, you need to specify the enable cross-partition query flag, or one or the other. Right?
Got it. So, okay. So you got to have one or the other there, or you're going to throw an exception, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
I also have a demo on that.
Okay.
And if you're using this trick here, so to add the sub item from the from clause, and you are not specifying the partition key, then your partition key must be in one of the sub items, what is not common. So be careful as well when you're using this syntax here, right?
Oh.
You need to tell where the partition key is somehow to the SDK. That's it.
So are you saying it needs to be,
or you need to specify the partition key, or one of the sub items is the partition key, and you can enable the flag.
So my partition key would have to be within the children's array there?
That's why we wrote that this is not common. This is not true for most of the cases. So probably at the end of the day, if you want to use this syntax here, you probably need to specify the partition key to the query items method. That's right.
Could I do a? This doesn't make sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I have a demo.
Okay. Yeah. Show me, because now I'm confused.
We have a whole bunch of examples here, and now you see how the SDK in action, right? So when you're creating, let's say you want to create a database, you're going to use the Cosmos client with your environment variables. You're going to create an instance of the Cosmos client. Then you're going to create an instance of your database with, you try to create a database. And if you get an error, probably it already exists, so you can get the database.
So you don't have the create if not exist function.
That's a great question. We do have, and it's in my demo.
Oh, okay, good.
The best question is when the answer is in the next tab.
Yeah, I'm just setting them up for you. It's like setting up bowling pins for you there, Rodrigo.
And we have something similar for container. You need to create an instance of your container based on the database instance that is based on the Cosmos client instance, right?
Got it.
That's how it works. Here, so this is a typical simple create container example, but if you want to create the container with analytical store, you need to specify the TTL. That's how you create an analytical store enabled container. And TTL, with analytical store TTL, you can use 0 or null to turn it off if you don't want to enable it. If you use -1, your data will be retained in analytical store forever, or any other number will be TTL in seconds, as the other TTL we have in Cosmos DB, the transactional TTL.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Yes, please.
Can I change the value of TTL for analytical store?
Again, that's a great question. So today you can't, and that's not the SDK. That's analytical store feature for now.
Backend.
You can turn it off. If you want to get rid of your collection, of your analytical store, you need to delete your collection.
Got it.
Yes, great question. You can get information from existing containers and database. I also have some demos about it. How to create data, you need to use the upsert method. So we're gonna create the client, the database, the container, and just use the upsert item to load data.
Do I have to use that? Isn't there an insert item as well in the Python SDK?
Only the upsert item. And
okay.
Yeah, we are lean. It's lean design. And we are minimalists. But we do have the delete item, right? So here we have an example on how to do a delete all rows from model 2 in a collection.
So there's only 3 point operations. There's upsert, delete, and read.
Yes.
Okay.
And read.
If I call upsert for a new item, is it because upsert can be expensive, right? More expensive than a create.
If the item doesn't exist, it'll be an insert.
Okay. And it'll cost you what an insert costs.
Yes.
Okay.
So here is how you run a query to get your data back. That's the query item method. And you see that we have a plain SQL query here. But you also can create parameterized queries. So you'll be able to inform the query, the model you want to filter, and things like that. Also, the name of the collections and things like that, right? So you can create something more dynamic. Database properties, you can read information about the database, and to read the throughput, the method instead of read, as you can see here, is read offer. And you get the throughput, the RUs of your database, of your container.
Got it.
Right? And you can change, while you can't, for now, change the analytical TTL, you can change the transactional TTL. So you can use the replace container method to change a couple of settings of your collection, like the TTL. Oh, can I change the partition key? No.
No.
But you need to use it in the method.
Got it. Okay.
So here we are not changing the partition key. We're saying what is, right? Some information about troubleshooting and how to log, and if you want to debug, and that's all. So this is a very rich README file. We are always working to help you guys, the developers, with that. But I want to show some last tricks here. First, the changelog. If you want to see when something was fixed or when something capability was added, where we are, and that's the place to go, the changelog. Also, we have some extra samples here in this folder. They're very useful, and they go beyond the samples we have in the README file. Very rich examples. But there is an extra trick here. If you go to the test folder, you see all of our tests for every single feature, of every single capability. So you can also leverage these tests to see how something is done with this SDK.
Yep.
So it's pretty common to use these tests as a reference for your development work, right? So let's go. Let's do some demos here.
Let's do it.
Yeah. So this is the Cosmos DB Data Explorer, and I created here a new notebook just for this session. And the first thing we're doing is to create a database. I pasted here that same thing on the variables to create the client, but here in Cosmos DB notebooks, that's not necessary. Why? Because the notebook knows where you are. So you don't need to inform the account URI, the key. The notebook knows that you are already inside within the account, right? So you can skip the client initialization. You can go straight to the. Also, you don't need to import a couple of things like import the azure.cosmos. It's pre-imported for you in every single notebook. So that's two optimizations, experience improvements you have here in the notebook. So let's create our database. And just want to call out that here in our notebooks, the Cosmos client is Cosmos _ client. Of course, you can create the old traditional format of the Cosmos client, but if you want to use the pre-initialized client, you need to use Cosmos _ client, right?
Now, if I wanted to, I guess I would do that if I was going to connect to another account out of this notebook, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And here, as you mentioned, I'm using the created database if not exists.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Here I'm doing the same. I'm creating, so I created the Azure Cosmos DB Live Test DB. So if I refresh here, probably, yeah, here it is. And now I'm going to create a collection. My partition key will be ID, and the offer will be 400 RUs. Right, and create container if not exists. So here I populated the database client. With the same execution that I created, I also populated the client. Now I'm gonna use the database client to create a container and populating an instance of the container client for me. So let's run this guy. Oops. Let's see. The name was selected. Yeah, it worked. So now we have Azure TV data. So let's see if we have here. Yes, Azure TV data. Now let's get some properties from both. So we have the database ID and users. We don't have any users for now. And that's it. But about the collection, we have the index policy, not only the name, but the index policy, the partition key, and so on, right? The analytical TTL, it's all here.
Got all the metadata in there for that container.
Yes, but what about the offer? So if we try to read the offer of our database, we'll get an error. Why? Because we didn't specify any RUs for this database. So could not find an offer for this database. That's why. But we do have an offer for our container. The throughput is 400, right? So be careful if you want to get to read the offer of a database. If you have not specified a database throughput, you may get an error.
I see that question. Actually, I just saw it the other day. Someone was like, "Can you expose a property that shows where the throughput is set and how much, and do it on the account object?" And we're like, "No, we can't do that. Really, you have to actually interrogate the resource to find out if it's actually there." So
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna show you now. We run our first query, and I'm using another database in another container. It's pre-populated with some data. So I'm gonna create another database proxy, another container proxy, and I'm gonna run this query, and we'll get an error. Which error is this? I'm just selecting everything from the families containing. The problem is I'm not specifying the partition key, neither the flag to enable cross-partition queries. So I'm getting exactly this error back from the SDK. Cross-partition query is required but disabled. So to fix it, well, here, I'm gonna get rid of things here. So now the same query, but I'm enabling the cross-partition query. And now we have the data, right? In a JSON format, because I'm converting and printing it all to JSON.
That JSON dumps that native Python there?
Yes, you just need to import the JSON.
That's nice. It's got a little print thing, huh?
Yeah. And you can.
That's cool.
If you can indent if you want. It's pretty cool.
I do. I use the Newtonsoft. I just cast it to a J object and then print. That's what I do when I'm in .NET. So
yeah. What reminds me is something important here. When we created our database, I didn't import anything, any library, zero. Just created the database. But
Yep.
to create a container, you need to import the partition key. So this is required.
Got it.
Even here in our Cosmos notebooks. Of course, in another IDE, Visual Studio Code, you need to import both. You need to run these as well, as we have in all of our examples in GitHub. But I'm just going through the edge to the limit of the enhancement experience of our Cosmos notebooks. Okay, we could run a query, but what if I just want I just want the children, as we had in that example, right? Now I'm using this syntax here. I'm just getting the children, and now I have the first name, gender, grade, and pets of each children. So that's how it works, right? And again, I'm converting the results to JSON. And what about the Boolean thing we were talking about?
Yeah, show me.
So I'm creating here on the first container, the Azure TV data container. That's what we have here, the container client proxy. Just a simple product data, and I have this is enabled Boolean information. So this is Python, right? So if I change it to true, it's not blue anymore, meaning that it's just a string for the language. So if you want a real Boolean, true, now it's blue, right? And let's load this data in that collection. And if you go here, items, take a look. True, all lowercase. So, but if I use the same JSON conversion I was doing before for the data in this collection, again, we have the typical JSON format, right? That's exactly what is that was written to Cosmos DB container. But if I run the same query, printing the results without the JSON conversion, now you see the uppercase back. Why? Because the SDK is converting back a Boolean field to Python format, right?
Uh-huh.
So
there it is.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So besides that, I just want to call out about one of our notebooks, one of the notebooks that we have in our gallery, the visualization. And you see we have this very cool visualization capabilities built in our notebook, like Deb was showing in the last episode. So
yeah, pretty cool.
You can populate a data frame with the output of a query with these magic commands, and it will create this interesting tabular visualization. But you can also use check some graphs, and it's everything is built in. So it's interesting to work with Python and leverage these capabilities we have. So that's the end of our demos, 11 cells. And I shared this notebook with you, right? The presentation as well.
Yeah. So I loaded that up on our repo. So if folks want to check out Rodrigo's notebook that he was just showing off here, as well as the PowerPoint deck that he had in there with all the links, just go to our repo. It's github.com/azure-cosmos-db/live-tv, and it's episode 6. I can't remember exactly the name of it, but just look for episode 6 folder in there, and you'll find a Python notebook and a PowerPoint deck you can download in there. So feel free to check that out and play with it. And that's it, I guess, for today's episode. Rodrigo, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, Mark. And please, I'm always available to help. And if you have any challenge, suggestion, issue, just reach us. We are here to help.
Yep. Yeah. So feel free to, if you got questions on the Python SDK, you can go to their repo there, and I'll put that back up, I think, right here. And you can file issues there, or look for issues, or put in suggestions, or check out the extra samples and help they've got in there. Yeah. And Rodrigo's got all his links up there you can take a look at. So absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Rodrigo. It was great having you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. I just want to call out, we are about 3 weeks away from our very first ever Azure Cosmos DB Conf. It's a, well, not 24 hours, but we're going to run it over a 2-day period, starting 9 a.m. Pacific time here in Seattle, or there in Seattle, since I'm not in Seattle anymore. 9 a.m. Pacific time on April 20th. And we're going to run 3 live streams. So we'll have one that'll run for 3 hours in Americas. And then we'll have one that starts, I believe 8 p.m. Pacific time. That'll run for 3 hours for the Asia Pacific region. And then we'll have a third one that'll start at 1 a.m. Pacific time. That's, believe me, better time for Europe, but that's the EMEA, so the Europe and Africa, Middle East time zone friendly stream. And all 3 streams, each 3 hours, all has unique content from local speakers. We'll also have a round of on-demand sessions available as well, so that you can watch those while you're in between the streams, or just watch them anytime you want. And those will all be available on April 20th when we go live. So that's it for Azure Cosmos DB Conf. Really excited. Hope you all can make it. Next week on Azure Cosmos DB Live TV, we're going to have talk about change feed. So we'll have Tim Sander back on again. He was with us episode 2, talking about all the great query improvements and indexing engine improvements. He also manages all of our change feed features as well. And there's been a ton of good stuff going on there. And so he'll talk about change feed next week. So that's it, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Rodrigo, for spending an hour with us today and showing us the Python SDK. Very cool stuff.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.